You're listening to the Storm Report, your weekly insight into the Manchester Storm, brought to you on Storm TV by Max Artis and Maddie Finnegan.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Storm Report, your exclusive podcast here on Storm TV. I'm your host, Matty Finnegan, and joining me, as always, you have your match night host, Aidan Millen, the best commentator in the world, Max Artis, and your official Storm TV cameraman, Dean Byrne. Hope we're all doing well, fellas.
Not bad.
Yeah,
I'm just
doing
wondering
fine.
who the hell calls Max the best commentator in the world.
I don't know, but it's not the it's not everybody around the league, but it's most people by what I hear.
Max
He must be
definitely
Matty's
does.
favourite.
Clearly,
He's definitely my favourite. You need to listen to the first episode we did of this because I clarified that. I was like, I'm joined by my favourite commentator, and that stays true. That stays true. We played 2 games this past weekend. We had a home game for our spooky fright night against Guildford, the Halloween special, and then we had a trip away to Sheffield. Starting with Guildford, Dean, it was all going well in the first period. Had a goal, then started the second one really well, got another goal, things were looking on the up, but then chaos started to ensue, didn't it?
It did indeed. It was safe to say it was definitely a frightful night for us there. You know, like you said, we were coming out strong in the first period. You know, we got goals from Estevez and Heinen, and I think from that, I think just something went on there that just got into our heads. And like I said last week, it was a bit of a snowball effect where it just kind of rolled out of control. And as a sort of new fan to the sport, I can safely say that's probably one of the biggest sort of riot fights I've seen on the ice to date, and I can't compare it. The only thing I can compare it to is a local derby riot when United don't get the result we want, which is most weekends. But yeah, it was it was a very interesting game. You know, it was disappointing not to get the result we wanted, but I can come away from that game from where I was stood. There was a standout performance for me, and it was our very own number 35, Evan Wenninger. Although a few goals went past him, he did put in a belting effort, not just in the Guildford game, but as we will talk about a bit more later in the Sheffield game.
Definitely. I think Wenninger put up a really good performance. It put up a good enough performance to earn the Player of the Game award on the day. We can't forget that. I think I can pinpoint the exact moment that we went from a hockey game to more of a boxing match. There was when Heinem got the double minor. Obviously, can't remember who it was on the play, but one of the Guildford players introduced him to the goalpost. He nearly went head first, and then he didn't really like that much, so we took exception to that. Him and Heber behind the play, and that double minor sent him off to the box, and they cashed in on one of those penalties, did the Guildford Flames, and that was where things kind of started to derail. Aidan, there was a moment not too long after that where we had not 1, not 2, not even 3, but 14 individual penalties in the span of about 10 seconds, all kicking off at once.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I mean, I've seen periods end early before for one reason or another, but that must be the first time it's ever happened because the referees need that much time to sort out the penalties, because they did come off and they were looking at the video footage and we were all wondering what the calls were going to be. And then all of a sudden the guys are all coming off the ice and refs are going back to the room, and it's like, okay, I guess we're wrapping up early then. So I did the call that, yes, players going off, we're ending period too early. But what was interesting, not necessarily about that particular incident, but the one preceding it with Heinem, Heber, and a couple of minutes after that, Derflinger joined him in the box. There was a lot of chirping going on. You know, one of the privileges of my position is you do often hear it when the players are giving each other jip while they're both in the box, and that was going on a lot at that particular moment in time. Various swear words been passed back and forth, questions about what particular Guildford players' role in teams might be, and questioning what they're doing over here in the first place. There was a lot of that. There was also quite a few cheeky little smiles I was seeing as well from guys at our side as well. So you could tell there was a bit of needle, but it certainly were they were enjoying that element of it. But the game had that undercurrent of tension. And to be fair, Speaking to people who aren't Manchester fans who have seen Guildford, that is something they have noticed other teams have as well. You know, there seems to be something about Guildford that is getting under the skins of opposing teams, and we certainly saw that in effect. And then also the big I'll say brawl kind of happened. I mean, I think I've seen worse things in my time in hockey, but is the way it triggered. So what I noticed, the thing that triggered it, the big thing in the end, was something happened with Joe Morrow, where somebody he was in his own zone, someone chirped him or nudged him or something, and then you could see something go in Joe where he's like, right, this has to end, and then he skated up to the ice to the Guildford player in question. I can't remember which one it was, and that's where it all went. And I think one of the funniest things in the box was where loads of players in there, equipment all over the show. One of the Guildford players had lost an elbow pad, and no one could figure out where it was. I don't know if he eventually found it, but yeah, it was an interesting few minutes.
I like the phrase and the terminology that Max used on the commentary. He used the phrase yard sale with everything that was all about the place. It certainly looked like it. I mean, me and Max had a bit of a tricky time. I'm not going to compare it with the time of the referees having to try and assess 14 different penalties at once. I really don't envy that position. But we had a little bit of a time where we were trying to entertain the stream and find out what was going on at the same time. And it was just absolutely mental. I mean, from your position, Max, have you ever been in a situation personally that's been quite as hectic as that?
In a professional stance, being commentary wise, I think 2 or 3 years ago when I was doing like some lower league stuff, one of my first games kicked off into almost a bench clearing brawl. I think it was Nottingham Lions versus Billingham Stars. I can't pick up, but there was action off the ice and on the ice, and then benches emptied, and that game had to get settled down for I think for a good 15 minutes. The referee said both teams to the changing rooms to kind of cool off and then come back out. I do want to throw a little bit of credit to the officials to be able to go to the review timekeeper's box and them acknowledge that it's going to take them some time, and they actually afforded themselves the time to get all the calls that they needed to. I think if those players had stayed in the game, it just devolves into even worse debauchery that we saw. And yeah, we could have seen a lot more fisticuffs, a lot more action come the third period if they'd have stayed, if those players had not been removed from the game.
There was a lot of sandpaper hockey of getting under each other's skins from both sides, really, because you have players like Derflinger for us that are incredibly talented at doing just that. But as you mentioned, Aidan, Guildford have kind of mastered that art as well, and they definitely got under each other's skin, and it came to a boiling point at the end, and it was Catenacci was the player that ended up slew-footing Joe Morrow. And Joe Morrow's case was it happened pretty close to a referee, but obviously the game's happening so fast, you can't blame the referee for not seeing it. But I think Joe Morrow definitely did, and he decided to take exception to that. And then none of the other players on the ice needed invitation to get involved in a bit of a line brawl.
Yeah, I think it kind of, if anybody hasn't gone and watched back on YouTube, firstly the highlights, and then secondly the interview with Mike Flanagan, I think he kind of puts it quite poetically in that the players took it into their own hands where it shouldn't have to come to that point.
I think one thing that has led to the situations that we've seen this weekend, I'm not going to go into the specifics of them, but the Storm have lost a couple of players to injury, 2 hits so far this season for several games. And, you know, you want to let the referees do the policing, but sometimes a team feels like they need to stick up for themselves to prevent that sort of thing happening again. And I think that is one of the things that's kind of led to 2 very feisty games this weekend.
Yeah, I was talking with Dean about that after the Guildford game, about I mean, you can jump in on this actually, Dean. The Storm kind of feeling like they need to stand up for themselves and kind of, I don't want to say fight back, but I feel like it's the right word, because you can get periods of play where it's just hockey. There's no physicality going on, but sometimes you just get one too many hits on your guys, and you just feel as though something's got to give, and you've got to kind of push back a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. It goes back to that saying, you know, it's kind of like you're trying to poke the bear, and there's only so many times that you know, you're going to get away with it before the bear attacks. And I think that's the case. And they have every right to stand up for themselves. You know, they don't want to be seen as a weaker team that anyone can come into the storm shelter and just kind of go, oh, we can sort of take the nick a little bit, you know, get into the reds, and then the game's ours for the taking. And that's definitely not the Storm I know. But yeah, I think it's just a case of, like Aidan was saying, you know, we have had a lot of players be sidelined with injuries recently. So I think they have had to sort of motivate themselves to sort of be a little bit stronger on the ice. And I think it is at the point now where it's the case of, if it's at the cost of losing points and maybe losing our position in the table, it's kind of time to sort of think of different tactics now to sort of say, right, we need to kind of get control of the situation before we end up way below where we should be.
It's definitely a dilemma to consider if you are Mike Flanagan and assistant coaches, where you want to be physical, you want to show the other team across from you, the other bench, that you're not afraid of them and you're not to be taken lightly. But then, yeah, like everyone's been saying, you need to kind of have the balance of also being able to put up good hockey goals, put up like good points, and end up getting those points on the board to show for it. And I mean, with all the chaos that ensued, to kind of wrap that up, we did have, I'll say it again just because it's mental, 14 individual penalties at once. From that chaos, 3 players got sent out of the game with 5-minute major plus game penalties that were served by other members. So the benches were really short. But when there's kind of chaos unfolding like that and the game's relatively neutral, like there's not momentum with either team, those kind of moments can have such big impacts. And unfortunately for the Storm, it went the way of Guildford on that day. We had a 4-2 loss at home, and that will make it back-to-back losses at home. And Max, I want to come to you on this. Do you think that there is a kind of sense that we need to perform better at home and might be struggling at home, or am I just overreacting here?
I'm going to say a slight overreaction. And the reason why I can see where a lot of fans are going to be on the same kind of mentality as yourself. Got to realize that I don't think Flanagan's had a full lineup even during preseason. I can't think of one game at home that has seen every single member of the Storm full roster available to play, and that's only going to hamper the chemistry that lines can have, the connectivity that players will have between each other when you're potentially playing on numerous lines and different line mates and different centers, and I think at one point only four defensemen for one or two games, and junior players having to get called up as fantastic as they've done. Yeah, I think that's kind of the reason behind it. We've not seen this Manchester Storm team at its full capacity.
I think it's also worth remembering we're in a similar spot this time last year.
Yeah,
where came into the new year where we were getting a lot of points on the road, not so many at home. And it wasn't until about January time where we really turned that round and went on a really good run that got us to 4th in the league. So I think we just need to have patience. We're not losing, apart with the exception of the Cardiff and the Belfast games, we're not losing games comfortably. They're very tight. You have to remember, in the Elite League, the quality of the teams is generally pretty even. And a lot of games are on a knife edge, particularly, like, say, teams of the mid-table level, of which I believe we are. So it's not going to take much to turn the dial the other way, I believe, and we're not far away. We just have to keep going.
Yeah, I think. Sorry.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, just very quickly. Also, one thing we've got to remember is that this is Mike Flanagan's first season in the Elite Soccer League. So again, it is going to be a bit of patience, a bit of time to adjust to obviously the way things are made. So, and I do agree. You know, once we see a sort of healthy Storm lineup, we could be in for a big turnaround, like Aidan said.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Mike Flanagan has to learn to get to grips with the league itself and the different nuances that it can propose. With the teams being so tight most of the time, like you say, the games being on a knife edge, it can take certain moments to kind of turn the game. And in the Guildford game that we had, I think undoubtedly it was that one moment of chaos where it became a boxing match rather than a hockey match in Guildford. And we're going to move on now to talk about the Sheffield game, where I believe it was yet again a game of moments. And boy, oh boy, this away trip to Sheffield definitely got the community talking. I think there were two or more ejections. We had two more ejections in this game. Both of them were for the Storm, though. In the last game, there was one player for Guildford that got sent out as well. In this game, it was just Heber and Alexi Dawu. And Aiden, if you don't mind, I'll come to you on this because I think depending what color you wear, whether you were wearing orange or more purple, your opinion of the decisions there might change. But one thing's for certain, if you lose two of your centers from your team, it's going to mix around the lines and it might make it, I don't want to say put the game out of reach, but in essence, it makes it a lot more difficult to play the rest of that game.
Oh, incredibly. I mean, you do get, as a forward in hockey, there's a lot of flexibility generally. Guys will go wing, center, etc. But to lose two centers out of generally between 3-4 lines that we play will have a big impact, especially when you're playing Sheffield away, where you really need to be absolutely 100% on your game. And that is going to have an impact. When you said stuff about decisions and what shirt you're wearing, partisanship in fans, you're always going to see. We're seeing some fun stuff on social media this week, which we're not going to talk about too much, but it's just, this is hockey fandom, guys. This is just the way it is. You support your team through thick and thin. You'll disagree with fans, especially of other teams. It's just part of the fun.
And I will say the game was a lot of fun. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, because obviously it was an away game, so there's going to be naturally less of the Storm fans able to go and see it. But I actually was able to go and be part of the away fans this week. It was a lot of fun, I have to say, traveling down there. My first away day of the season. It won't be my last. And I got to meet some pretty incredible people. I got to meet I'll give a special shout out to James and Louise, who were sat next to me. Had a lovely chat with them in one of the intermissions. And they have been listening to the podcast, so that's always going to get you a shout out. Well done, you. But in terms of an away day, it was very exciting. And I just think that's something that we can talk about because being someone that does a lot of the home games, you don't normally get to experience the thrill of going and supporting your team, going traveling with your team to a different place. So I wanted to ask you guys what your first memory of an away day in hockey was. I feel like it's a thing you would associate with football, but maybe not with ice hockey going and traveling and supporting your team with the teams being so far away. I'll start with you, Max. What was your first hockey away day?
Well, being a Nottingham lad and growing up, it's quite obvious that Sheffield at Christmas and Boxing Day, Christmas Classic is it's the first one that springs to mind. There have been numerous ones since, but I think my first one was Sheffield away as well.
Not a bad first game to go to. Aiden, what about you?
You're going to show me age now. I think my first away game was Sheffield, but I don't remember it because I would have been 13. And I'm assuming we lost because we didn't have any joy against Sheffield that year until the very last game of the season, which was the big MEN Arena sellout that everybody remembers. The first away trip that I remember, though, was going to Scotland when Storm played the Ayr Scottish Eagles
Jeez.
at the Spectrum rink. Was it Spectrum? I believe it was. That was their Grand Slam year. The Eagles, I think it was only like their first or second year in existence or something like that. Oh no, that's a lie. This one, sorry, I'm going to sound like an old rambling band. I know it was the year after. No, it was their first year in existence. They won the Grand Slam the next year. Storm were terrible on the road that year. I think we only won 3 games on the road that year, but that was one of them, which was nice. It was like a 4 or 5 hour coach trip. Went on with all the other Storm fans and my family, and we watched Fantasy Football League on video on the coach on the way up. It was an interesting experience, but a really good day.
Gonna ask you a little bit more about that. I want to find out just for the fun of it. Did you go to that game? Was your first away game before I was born?
Oh, it certainly was. You wouldn't tell, you put a picture side by side, mate. You won't think there was that many years in it. I was young for my age. But yeah.
I'll stay silent on that matter. Anyway,
1996, I believe it was.
1996. Yeah, I definitely was not around to enjoy hockey games at that time. Dean, what about you, bud? What was your first away game that you can remember?
Well, I think there is a bit of running theme here, but my first away game was in 2022. So not that long ago, and it was against Sheffield. It was in the Challenge Cup, and unfortunately, we didn't come away with a win. It was a 6-0 loss, but it was a great experience, and from that, I've been able to be fortunate enough to go to a few more away days, such as Belfast, and bit of a shout out here on my wedding honeymoon. Ex-Storm player Chase Ruddy hooked me up with some Orlando Solar Bears tickets, so I actually got to witness my first American away day as well. So I think I've had a bit of a fortunate one there. But I think away days, like going into a bit more detail, there are so many good things to enjoy about an away day, not just the ice hockey, but like you say, meeting and sort of interacting with different fans you wouldn't normally do at home, and obviously going to travel to a different city. I think one thing that I love about an away day, and I think it might be a bit of an obvious one, but I think I do. I'm a bit as a bit of a foodie. I do like trying the different foods in the different rinks that they have to offer. So like say Sheffield, they have quite the good poutine range for if you ever go to a Sheffield Steelers game, you want to try a bit of poutine. It's a good place to try. But I want to ask all the others, would you say you enjoyed about the away days? I'll go and start with you, Matty. What did you enjoy about?
I think the thing I enjoyed the most was definitely the people that I got to meet. You briefly touched on it there, but because most of us, well, all of us, I should say, have a job to do that requires them not really talking to fans during the home games, being able to go and just support the team and just meet the fans themselves is a really fun experience. And you get to have people that come up to you, you can talk to them about all sorts of things, hockey related, not hockey related, but just being able to have a really good time watching your hockey team with people that are so like-minded, I think is an experience that I really enjoyed, and I'll be looking to do more of that for sure.
Aidan, what about you?
I can have a beer. Also, I can't have
An
a beer
obvious
if we go
one.
to a Manchester game because they're obviously I'm working, and so I'm very professional and care about that. But also the fact that I've got to drive for 2-3 hours from Nottingham and go home again afterwards. So yeah, especially I mean I don't go to many away games these days because every home game is effectively an away game for me, and do have a full-time job during the week, so do need to spend a bit of time with the wife. So that's what the other day tends to be for. But when it is away games, it's usually when the Storm travel to Nottingham, which is a mile and a half down the road from me, and I can walk to the rink and go bunkers and have a beer and see all the other fans and sit with them. And it's such a great time. So that for me, I can have a beer.
Definitely, you can't argue with that. Max, what about you? What's your favourite part about the away day?
For the handful that I've been on throughout my years, I have to say something. As much as each match night experience is unique, the drive to the game, whether you have to get up at silly o'clock or you can kind of have a bit of a lay in or whatever else, and it's the drive, the anticipation of getting to the game. Away days do just feel a little bit more special because then they don't happen all the time. You kind of have to plan around them and stuff. And you make like for me, I try and make as much of it as much of a day of it as possible, and try and plan a couple of things to do and get there relatively early and kind of see around the local area and whatever else.
Definitely, I definitely agree with it. And obviously, if you want to, viewers listening in on this, if you want to take an away day with the Storm Sport, they'll be more than happy to help get you involved in that because I know they do organise a lot of away days and a lot of coach trips as well to some of the away games as well.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm going to be jumping on, whether it be for a Belfast trip or up to Scotland, because those are some rinks that I haven't been to yet, and I want to experience them. So who better to experience them with than the Storm fans?
You can't get much better company than your very own Storm fans. But yeah, like you were saying there, Max, obviously there's going to be Storm away days we want to go to. So, Matty, sorry to cut you off there, but what's the away day you'd like to go to next?
Well, I think my dream away day would be as far as I can possibly go with the Storm. I'll kind of borrow off what Max was going there, saying it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. It was really, really philosophical there from you, Max. But in terms of the journey and having a lot of fun, I think any of the places further up north in Scotland, I can't fathom getting to Belfast, at least not by myself. So I definitely have to go Team Storm support for that one. But I think more locally, I'll be looking to go to the Panthers away game in the not too distant future. So if you happen to see me around, if you know what I look like, feel free to say hello. Same goes to any of you guys, I'm sure, if you're out and about and people see you.
I know, Matty, you're talking about how young you are, but you know you're old enough to buy a plane ticket, right? You can't give that. I can't go to Belfast on my own, mate. Airports aren't that scary. No one's going to kidnap you. You've got to survive the vomit comet to Belfast, that's all.
Yeah, but speaking of traveling, I was able to catch up with your very own general manager and head of player care and operations, Chris Bailey and Ryan Finnerty, respectively. They were up traveling in the car, but they gave us some time, and I think that's very generous. Let's hear from them then. I am joined at this time by General Manager of the Manchester Storm and now owner Ryan Finnerty, and he's in the car at the minute with Chris Bailey, your head of operations and player support. Ryan, Chris, how are we doing today?
Yeah, we're good. Just on the road at the minute. Ryan's driver today, so I get to put my feet up a little bit. Passenger princess, I think some people call it.
Well, one of your many roles with the Storm. I actually wanted to pick up on that and one of the roles that you do, because head of operations, you get that at many clubs, but you don't actually get head of player support. It's not a very common role, at least not over here. So I wanted you to tell me a little bit about what you do with that role.
I don't think any other team does have it in the league. It's something that Ryan and I spoke about over the summer. I'm sure that he'll probably chime in as well on this, but the player support role, been quite close to a lot of the guys for a long time now, and these guys that have come in that I've known before they play here, before they've even played in the UK, and just having them relationships enable us to almost create a bridge between coaching staff and management and the players. There's always going to be things that crop up where maybe they don't want to take it to Mike Flanagan or they don't want to raise it with Finner, and it allows us to kind of create that personal relationship where the guys can come to me because they're quite comfortable with us. You know, these other occasions where there might be issues that they want to raise, I'd say that's probably the key thing for us, but it also provides us that kind of outlet where, you know, the guys might have some frustrations they want to let loose on, and, you know, they might want to talk about personal issues, things like that. So it's kind of been an ear for them, but also a voice of reason. And sometimes things are quite difficult for guys to bring up directly with Ryan or Mike. And, you know, I can go and have them conversations on their behalf. Sometimes it's these things that they'll come to me with, and I'll say to them, this probably isn't something that you want to kind of go to battle on. It's quite minor in the grand scheme of things, but then there'll be some times where I'll take it to the club and, you know, Ryan or Mike will say, you know what, they've got a valid point there. So it enables us to kind of take a bit of pressure off the management because it's a go-between. And, you know, it enables the players to kind of be able to voice things probably a little bit easier and not feel like it is something that they can't speak up about. So I suppose that's probably the easiest way of defining my role with the players. It's kind of the go-between, the guy that kind of helps them day to day. But I think in terms of the operational stuff, we've got some really, really good staff that work at the club, and the club has grown significantly over the past couple of years. And whether that be Rick Thorpe, who's, you know, that support liaison management, or Mark Noakes, who's the commercial manager, Kate, who's running social media, and those guys are all doing a fantastic job. But it's my job to kind of link it all together. So there's probably not an area of the club that I don't kind of dip in and help go side to side, but maybe more of a question for Ryan, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Chris kind of nailed it. Over the years, you've noticed the player has changed a little bit now, and we just wanted to make sure that, you know, none of our guys really suffered in silence. If there was something, you know, that was maybe too paralyzing to bring up to me or to flags, or, you know, they thought it might impact the on ice, you know, we didn't want that kid to sit there and not have an outlet. So we wanted to make sure that he had a confident outlet that he could go to that could then represent him. And, you know, and a lot of times it's little things that weigh heavy on players' minds, and they're very little things for us to do or to help with. And that was just the idea, was just kind of giving that outlet for our guys. You know, we're conscious of everything that's going on in the world, mental health, everything else. And we just want to make sure that we had that outlet for our guys. You know, it's just for them to know that they can, you know, if they are concerned about something or maybe unhappy about something, without any prejudice, they can rise it up, bring it up, and hopefully we can come to a positive conclusion.
I think that's something that's quite commendable about Storm management, is the fact that they've almost got this pioneering role of having someone to be in the corner of the players. And I definitely think that that could be a contributing factor to us being able to retain so many players. And we'll get to that in a little bit. Chris spoke about his role kind of having him involved in all sorts of different elements of the team. And I think that is only more so the case with you, Ryan, with your general manager role that you have now. Many fans from the Storm will remember you from being on the bench and stuff like that, but you're doing a totally different role now, and fans might not really be aware of what you do on a day-to-day. So could you tell me exactly that? Like, what is the role of a general manager of a hockey team?
Well, I think how much time do you have? It's obviously I work with my coaches, and whether it was Skinner or Flags. On the recruitment side, I work a lot with the agents. I broker the deals. I do all the contracts, and you're pretty busy in the summertime. But when you get everybody in, there's so much behind the scenes, from visas to flights to accommodation to everything else that goes alongside of making it a good experience for our guys. I think people think that once they sign that contract, they come over and hopefully everything goes well. And it's not like that. It's just the beginning of the journey. And, every player now is different. Every player's need is a bit different. And I think over the years, we've kind of realized that we don't maybe have the facility of Belfast or Sheffield, but what we have is arguably the greatest city in the country to play in. And even furthermore, the greatest pocket of that city in Ultram for the guys to play in. And all of our guys live in Ultram Hale. We want them to get the best of it. Obviously that comes at an extreme cost, but we felt that was important, that was an area that we had to invest in. And I think it does work. Obviously we communicate with our players, and a lot of guys don't even know how nice that little area is to live in, and just how easy it is that, the gym is there, the rink is there, grocery store, the restaurants, the coffee shops, the pub, whatever it is you need is within a couple 100 yards of you. And I think that's super important. And I do believe that's been a large reason as to why guys get comfortable and want to come back here. Obviously our fan base, when that arena is going, it's an exciting place. It takes a little while to appreciate it, but when that, when the arena is going and the crowds have been coming, we've really, really grown over the last couple of seasons. And it's a fun and exciting place to play when your place is bumping. And yeah, I know. I just said we just wanted to make sure we created an environment for our guys to have success in on the ice. We always say take away the excuses, take away anything like that. Make sure that they're they feel like they're respected and they feel like this is a club they want to kind of compete for, for the name on the front. And obviously our name of it is to recruit well and keep guys here.
I think on top of that as well, Ryan touched on it, and it is every player's need is so different now. When, like Ryan said, you see his announced players and you see that there's a contract that's been signed and a guy's coming over, but quite often there's so much more behind the scenes in that. Like some of these guys, they don't live, like we're quite fortunate in Manchester, for instance, we're on the doorstep of an airport. That some of these guys might live in the absolute middle of nowhere in Western Canada. It's difficult. We have to look at the logistics, but not just for the players. A lot of guys now, they'll travel with the girlfriends. We want to make sure that they're well taken care of. So there is an awful lot that goes into bringing a player in, and whilst you see that the bulk of that is done in the summer, that work never actually really stops. We're like any other sports team in the world. We're constantly looking at where we can improve, and if somebody becomes available that we think is going to add to our team, we're always in the position and we're always prepared to be able to pull the trigger on that. So there is kind of an ongoing piece that's always in the background. There's constantly conversations that do go on because we want to reach the heights that we can achieve. We've got lofty ambitions.
You're following my line of questioning perfectly here. I do definitely want to talk about scouting and bringing in new players, but I'll just focus on the players that we've been able to keep first of all, because Ryan, you were starting to talk a little bit about that. I think it's been one of the most impressive things that as fans you get to see in the off-season is the retention and the hard work that you must have put in all through the previous year of retaining all those players like Joe Morrow, Evan Wenninger, and all those players that have really helped propel this club to a level that you can be proud of as a fan. How big of a deal is that to you in being able to keep these players around and almost build a core now for the Storm to work off?
Yeah, I think it's something we struggled with in the past. A little easier back in the day when we had kind of the 2-year school programs. The NBA programs kind of tied guys here for 2 years. keeping the core, keeping your captain Critchlow here, I think it goes a long ways for what we're doing. And, but obviously the players chose to come back, for their own personal reasons. And I'd like to think the club had a big part of that. And I do believe that we have belief that this club can compete. We can compete with anybody on any given night. We know that it's never a straight path forward for us, but at the same time, we feel like we're putting the right things in place to be able to do that, be able to compete at this level and with teams that are, there's some great hockey clubs in and around us. And we want to make sure that they mention our name the same as they do with the Sheffield, Belfast, Cardiffs. And that's sort of where we want to get to.
There's good goals to aim for. At this point, I would just like to say to the fans listening that if there are certain moments where Ryan and Chris cut out, it is because they are very busy people. And as we mentioned at the top of this, they are currently in a car traveling. So we just need to bear with it when that happens. That being said, let's move on to talk about the scouting while we've still got you. We've been able to bring in some names that have become household names with the Storm in recent time. People like Tyler Heinem, and more recently, Jake Derflinger has become a fan favorite so quickly. Where do you find these people?
Well, Heinem, obviously you deal with agents. I've been in the game now for a long time and have good relationships with agents, and we're able to get names first and foremost. Obviously, we watch a lot of film. We know a lot of guys in the East Coast League, American League. A lot of it is communication. A lot of it's what do you like? Who do you like? Somebody will phone me from North America and ask, maybe now they'll ask, now that I've seen every team, they'll ask me who I like in the league, and they'll get kind of an impartial kind of recommendation. And that's sort of how it works. It's kind of, it's a lot easier when you've been around for so long and you got kind of a pretty good list of guys that you can rely on to get pretty good information. And then now today's world, you can get on and you can watch every shift of that player for the last, 3-4 years. So it's made it a lot easier than it was back when I first started to actually be able to physically watch a player and watch back all of his shifts. And those are obviously the tools that we're all provided with. So I don't think anybody can tell you that they have the recipe to find the right player. There's a lot of luck that goes involved. But, mainly the focus, and you'll hear it from every coach, is you got to get the right person before you look at the player, because we've had them in the past say sometimes they sneak in the back door, but you get a bad apple in there, man, it's a nightmare. And you got to make sure your due diligence is strong, that you're getting the right guy to come in that will fit within our community, within our dressing room, within our fan base. Because if you don't have that, it doesn't matter what you bring in skill wise. We've seen that before. So yes, there's a lot that goes involved, and like I said, you could mumble on for the next 3 hours. Every guy in the world that does recruiting hits some and misses on some every time, and you just kind of, like anything else, you want to get you want to hit the ball more than you miss. And I think we've been fortunate enough with that last year, and then being able to retain the Tyler Heinems and Winnies, and that sure helps your odds moving forward.
Well, if luck is anything to go by, and when you talk about hits and misses, we've hit very big with Jake Derflinger. I will talk myself. He's been my favorite player to start the season so far, and I think I'm definitely not alone in that feat. But once Ryan has kind of found the players, and once we've agreed to get them to come to Manchester, Chris, it's almost now your job as they arrive and they settle in. You get to work with them and build up a pretty good relationship with the guys. And I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about what you spoke about earlier. I want to know how much of a crucial role that is. And I want to so when you first meet a player, talk to me about that. Like, do you go pick them up from the airport? How does that whole process come about?
No, I tend not to do the airport runs. That's, in all honesty, that we've got a lot of people around the club and guys that you don't necessarily work for teams. A lot of the guys that are in and around Storm support that'll do that. I'll do a little shout out to the Philpots, because I know that they've done more than a few, and it's people like that are kind of the lifeblood of the club in a certain sense, because they're always willing to muck in and help out where they can. But Rick Thorpe does a lot of those kind of roles. Rick's like the guy that, if you're unsure who does a job, it's probably Rick. He's constantly running around and making sure that things are done. And Mark Noakes helps out a lot with that as well. And we're very fortunate behind the scenes with the people that we have. We've got a really good group, a group that's all kind of pulling in the right direction and working together. I suppose to circle back to your original question, kind of where I come in. So sometimes it's before. So sometimes it's actually when we're identifying players and helping them kind of understand what their contract looks like, what kind of they should be expecting versus maybe where, just to make sure that they're on parity with what their expectations are across the league. It's not just that they're coming to Manchester and, could I get more in Sheffield or something like that. They understand that they're getting what they should be getting. But my conversations with them tend to pick up, if not before we've signed them, certainly pretty much as soon as we've signed them. So I'll speak to them about making sure that we're aware of when they're flying in. I'll speak to them about making sure that we know who they're flying in with, whether that be a wife, a girlfriend, a dog on their own. You never know. So making sure that we've got all of them details, making sure that we've got the right information for Scoops to make sure that their equipment's coming in okay, but then making sure that we've got information so that we can get them in the gym immediately, that all of the kind of, there's so many different things that you don't see as from the outside when we sign a player. When they arrive, we need to make sure that they've got all of their equipment, we've got their off-ice equipment, we've got their nameplate that sits above their locker room stall with the right number on it. There's all of these different things where we want to ensure that we're getting them before guys arrive, so that when they walk in the room, they really feel part of the organisation straight from the off. So, I'm speaking to them guys really early on. And then when they get there, it's just making sure that they're comfortable. Most people tend to know somebody. If they don't know somebody directly, they've probably got a buddy that's, makes with Critch. Critch is Mr. North American Hockey. He literally knows everybody. So there's probably someone that knows Critch. So they'll probably reached out to him and asking about Altrincham and Manchester and what it's like. And it's our job to kind of make sure that they feel completely comfortable once they do arrive.
Agent Cam Critchlow there, settling in and helping bring some good players to the team, no doubt. It's a very crucial role that you've got going on, and you've been very humble and giving loads of praise where it's due to other people. But I don't want to lose the importance of that role. And when it comes to especially the more player support side over the logistical side, do you think that other teams should employ this? Do you think this should be a thing that across the Elite League is put in place where it can to almost kind of grow the game in the UK?
I think moving forward, I think the more support the players feel they have, the better the athlete you're going to get. So I do believe, and there's a lot of things that come up. I mean, a lot of things that come up that we don't think about, but potentially a player like, not every guy gets points on the night. You may get beat 5-3 and you should have had a couple assists. You're probably not going to go tell your coach or your GM after a loss that, hey, you should have had a couple of assists. But ultimately, if you earned them, you deserve them, and you got to get them. So there's a lot of little things that guys need and deserve, but it's a lot of it's timing and trying to find the timing, and they can get paralyzed by that. So we just kind of want to take any of that away. We always say take the excuses away, give them everything that we can possibly do, and then hope that they, that translates on the ice. Like I said, we get the better athlete. Or I would agree every team sort of has or tries to do this to a level, but I do, with the situations that have arisen, already, I do see some real value in this, and hopefully our players kind of feel the same way. And we're always looking to get an edge, a competitive edge. And if this is, something that nobody else is doing, then great. Hopefully it'll give us that extra, 5-10% that we need.
I'm going to backtrack a little bit with you, Ryan. I want to talk about the transition from head coach on the bench to GM or off the bench. And as we've spoken about, all the business side of things that you now have to be involved with. For you personally, how have you found that transition?
It was all right. I mean, I was ready to leave. I think I was kind of ready to step away when COVID hit. I was ready to kind of step down, came back after that, and then being able to come back now and when Ginner took over and the way that transition worked, it just made a lot of sense. Ginner got hurt. He basically kind of job shadowed for a full season and then took over the team. I think it was beneficial for him and for the club. So, yeah, it's been good. Obviously, there's a lot of work in the background. Obviously, my wife never gets mentioned, but Emma does all of the finance. She does all the invoice, takes care of all that. So she's and the online shop and all that. So she's continuously grinding and on that side and all the work as we kind of try to grow the off ice side, and we're on to some really, really exciting things that I think we're going to announce here fairly quick. We believe in the brand, we believe in the merch, we believe that our fans, they're buying more than they ever have now, and we just continue to kind of push the brand as much as possible. The Manchester Storm's a great name. a name that is synonymous for ice hockey, especially in this area. And we want to continue to push that forward. And we want to see more Manchester Storm hoodies and hats, as we walk around this great city. But yeah, to get back to it, the transition's been fine. I still get to stick around the game. I still get to be around the players and practice. But at the same time, we got coaches now that have moved in. Flags, obviously, very experienced. With him, it's a lot of just learning the intricacies of UK hockey and the elite league and everything that goes around it. But he's been fun and a pleasure to work with. He's set the way he does things, and we give him the space to do that. We support him where and when he needs support. But yeah, overall, like Chris said, we're backed by a really, really strong team. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all of our staff, our volunteers. We made a really good thing all the way to Gord Simmons. You don't see a lot of him. He's in the background. He's part of the group as well. So it's starting to be a well-oiled machine, but we're continuously trying to find ways to improve and get better and continue to grow.
You talk about taking a step back and letting the coaches coach, but does a part of you ever want to get back on the bench and just shout at the players after a goal's gone in, or celebrate with them when they do something that you're proud of? Does a part of you ever miss it?
Yeah. That's probably the toughest part is trying to find an outlet for that. No, I mean, you're still heavily involved, right? You've still got passion. You maybe even more so because I don't have an outlet. But yeah, no, definitely. Obviously, I feel the lows as much as the the players do, and I love the highs when we win. And ultimately here that's what you want. If you didn't have passion, I think you got to get out of the game in a hurry because it's time for somebody else who you're holding back a job from. So yeah, no, I'll continue doing this until the passion's gone. And yeah, no, it's still there. It's still very, very much there. It's just a little bit different now, obviously, you don't have as much you don't have as much control, but at the same time, we got the trust in Flags, we got the trust in the team. We love the group we have. We think, it's so early right now, but we're very, very confident in the group we have, and we're continuing to find ways to get better. It's going to be a long year. It's all 10 teams are so competitive this year. It's not going to be an easy season.
You talk about maintaining the passion, but I also want to ask you a little bit about the academy and almost instilling that passion in the younger players that are coming up in the UK. And we've had a couple of main prospects reach the main roster in the last couple of years. And you must be pretty happy with how the academy's kind of developed and grown since you've been GM.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we made a promise. I think it was to Nick Crawley, Mark Thomas at the time when we switched everything over to the Storm Academy, that our idea is to grow players out of this academy that could play for us. And that was part of our business model. We could date back 5 years ago, and we on a podcast we talked about it. And I think Connor Lee came through, and we fast tracked him. And Connor's still developing. He's getting better and better. He's still so young, And then we saw Carolina and Crawley, and again, these are big prospects that we think can make that jump. We don't really care if they're playing in the NHL or Blackbird. It doesn't matter to us. These are kids that we get out and practice every day, and we feel that there's enough there that we can really, really invest in. And, obviously we're conscious of their age, but yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day too, we want our kids when they enter the academy to feel like, this isn't just some sales trick to get them here, but this is a pathway forward. We want to continue to find more and more kids that are coming through. We already got the next kind of 3-4 names to keep an eye on, and that's going to be a big part of that academy moving forward. We want to give them the pathway to play for us and earn a spot and become a regular. And that's the goal. That's what we're going to keep working at. Our guys are on the ice with the academies, with the girls, the girls team, with the coaches, and it all starts obviously at the grassroots with having good people around them. And we're fortunate enough to have good parents, good dads, good support for those kids. And we just want to kind of, be an influence that it isn't a dead end road, that we are looking to take kids from our academy and advance them onto the big club. And I think it's going to continue to pay dividends. I think it's going to help our academy recruit kids. We keep kids around, keep kids engaged. We don't want kids to give up on their dream at 15, 15 just because it hasn't maybe gone the way they are. We want them to keep pushing forward. A lot of players develop late, and we want to make sure that we are there to provide that pathway and that end result of all the hard work.
I think as well, like Brian said, there's a lot of hard work goes into the academy, and it's credit to people that give up their time to enable us to have people like Lisa Aldred, Nick Crawley, Mike Morin, and these guys that you've mentioned there that have come through, that they're not there to tick a box for us. That if they weren't at a level where we can see it, we wouldn't bring them in. It'd serve no purpose. That they're there on merit, and they've earned it. You know, the three that kind of the fans will be familiar with at the moment, whether that be Connor, Josh, or Noah Carriaina, those guys have all shown that they're capable of stepping up and doing this. But also, I think one thing that probably people don't see is that there's real mature heads on them shoulders. They're really switched on. You know, they read the game incredibly well. There's a bright future for all three of those guys. But like Ryan said, we're also very much aware of like the next few that are going to come through the academy, these names on people's lips. Isn't it? You know, we're mindful of that there is a progression route that keeps going. And when those guys are seeing the likes of Connor and Josh and Noah wearing that Storm jersey, we want them all to know that it's a possibility. And I think that there's going to be a number of them coming through. Like I said, we're hopeful that those three guys are players that, you know, do have a future with the club and will help the club grow to the heights that we want to take it to.
It's exciting, and I think it's exciting for fans because they get to have new names to cheer for, and they're local names as well. They're from the UK, and it's also exciting for the young players because they get to see people like Connor almost like setting a blueprint on how to get in and crack the main roster, and it can show that it can be done. And I think that that's really exciting for everybody involved. I want to ride that for my last question and kind of end things on a really high positive note, and I want to ask my final question to you, Ryan, about your main goals for the next couple of years for the Storm, where you want to take this team.
Well, obviously, yeah. I mean, we want to just continue to grow on and off the ice. I mean, we want to be better than we were yesterday. We want to grow the fan base. You know, the goal ultimately is bumps on seats. We want to get to a point where we're turning people away at the door, because when you have that, it alleviates all the pressure off. You can continue to invest more in players, you know, invest more in the infrastructure, everything else that makes it a lot easier. So we continue to push tickets, sponsorship, because that's how we're going to grow. That's the fastest route to growing. And we're not quite there yet. We're heading in the right direction. And then, you know, ultimately we finished fourth last year. We want to battle back, get into more cup finals and win some championships eventually. That's where we want to go. But, you know, realistically, we continue to take steps in the right direction. We're looking to also do more, maybe do things a little outside of the norm, sample some other products like what we're doing with Chris, and just try to look at kind of being original in what our thoughts are and what we want to, and how we can achievably move forward. We recognize that we have 2,000 plus seats in our building, and we're competing with some that have, you know, 5 times that. So we need to be ahead of the curve. And again, a lot of it is just kind of our values and our morals and our ethics that we want behind the club, the people we have supporting our club. And I think that'll take us to where we want to be. The new arena coming at Trafford, super exciting. A little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, working closely with the guys there, and see that's going to be a real exciting move for everyone. And but at the same time, we got to take care of where we're at right now. And hey, like we love that little arena we get to play out of. We continue to do what we can to make it a, you know, hostile environment. But at the same time, we got to start winning some hockey games in there, because that's ultimately why the fans come. And we got off to an okay start and then a few losses. So we got to turn it around, and we got a big game coming up against Belfast here, that arguably one of the best teams in the league on paper right now. And, you know, we got a good chance to really kind of redeem ourselves at home ice here on Saturday.
Belfast is next up, and it all does start on the ice. But I get the sense that it's a really encouraging time, and it's the right time to be a fan of the Manchester Storm. Ryan and Chris, thank you so much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Appreciate it. Cheers, Matty.
Thanks, Matty. See you, buddy.
Thank you very much to Ryan Finnerty and Chris Bailey for the time. We really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed that. We are not finished yet, though, because we have to talk about the Belfast game this weekend. Saturday the 9th, it'll be the Remembrance Night, which is always a good cause. And it'll be the only game that the Storm play this weekend. First of all, let's talk about the jerseys, because I know it's a really good occasion, but I think the jerseys are really nice, Aidan.
They are. Yeah. often one of my favorite jersey designs of the year. Dark green jerseys just seem to work for some reason. But it's not the most important thing. Like, obviously, remembrance is a big deal for the club, for the league as a whole, for people the country over. And it's really good to mark the occasion as we do every year. We always do the with the ceremony with the rain of the leaves, the sonnet, the last post. All that's really important. I'm always honoured to take a part in it every year.
Yeah, it's a tradition that I'm glad the hockey community embraces, and long may we continue to do that. As someone coming from a family that has been involved with the military, my dad serving for around 24, 25 years, I am always proud when these nights come around. So it's always a good occasion, and long may that continue. However, Belfast are going to be the team knocking on the door come Saturday. They are 4-2-1 from 7 games in the league so far. That is good enough for 9 points, if my maths is correct, which puts them 5th place in the table. By their standards, probably not as high as they want to be, but I don't think that tells the full story, Max.
No, not at all. Over the last 5 games, they've won every single one. Their last loss coming back on the 20th of the 10th, 5-1 loss against the Nottingham Panthers.
Yeah, five games in all competitions. That is with Challenge Cup to be considered as well. We don't play them in the Challenge Cup. It's only in the league, so we've got some league action for you. We had some league action against them already this season, Dean. But unfortunately for us, they had a very successful visit to the Storm Shelter, able to put 7 past us. What can we do to kind of, I guess, minimize and do some damage limitation from that and try and concede less goals?
Yeah, so sadly that was a night not to remember when we lost that one. But we haven't been bad. In February we did beat them 5-2, so that was a good one. But like I think reflecting on recent games and recent performances, I would say that we would have to start, going with a bit more focus in mindset that there's only one reason we're coming into this game, that is to win, get the points, and get where we deserve. And I think after the past 2 weekend games that we've had, I feel confident that that's the approach Mike Flanagan instilled in the players in training and leading up to the big weekend. So I'm fairly confident that it will be a very interesting game indeed to watch, and I can't wait to be filming it and watching it.
And one caveat on that 7-3 game, it was so far back in the history of this young season that I think Vinegar has only got better. The team has only got better. So I'm thinking we're going to see more of a well-rounded and a tighter scoreline than 7-3 suggests.
Well, I think you're right. I think we'll have a team that's more ready to go, a team that's more reflective of how Finner and Mike Flanagan will want to set it up, and it'll be a more reflective. It'll be a performance against Belfast. It'll be a good test to see where a stronger squad that we can put out there, like how they'll do against them. But I think it'll be interesting, Aidan, to see how much of a response we get from the last weekend. Dean kind of mentioned it a little bit there, but they've had a week to kind of let the dust settle from a fairly aggressive weekend with all the fights that the boys got into, ice them knuckles and really get back to the basics and kind of get ready for what should be a really good but tough contest.
Yeah, in Belfast games are often all action. In fact, it's reminded me we had a remembrance game against Belfast a few years ago. 6-3 win. There was quite a few fights in the game. Dallas Earhart had one that was like right up against the glass right in front of me. So they're often games against Belfast. They're usually high scoring affairs as well. They got a lot of firepower in that team, especially getting Picnic and Scott Conway back in the lineup. That's been a big boon for them. Both of them won Elite League Player of the Year one year after the other. And we're going to have to counter that, but we've got a lot of firepower ourselves. So if we play to our maximum, then we should be in for a highly entertaining, high-scoring game.
Well said, well said. I couldn't agree more. I think we teased a little bit there some of our thoughts and feelings going into that one. If you want to know how we truly feel going into that, then stay tuned for the forecast that will go out before the game. I'm very much looking forward to that because we had some opinions, we have some predictions. Some of them go well, mine usually don't, but we'll see how they go this weekend.
If Matty
Anyway.
mentions shutout again, we're going to slap him. So
It's
feel
not
good
allowed.
about that, everybody.
It's just not allowed to. You
No,
can't.
you're not allowed to say the S word.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't-
I've been made
ever.
aware there is a
Banned,
new
it's
swear
banned.
word in hockey that I
It's
need
not new,
to.
mate. It's not new. I know you again. I know you're young, but you're not so young. You don't know that. Come on.
Oh, yeah, stay tuned. Will I use the dreaded S word on the forecast this week? Stay tuned and find out. But for now, we have been your Storm Report podcast. Thank you for tuning in to this slightly longer episode this week. We thank you so much for your time and your attention. By the time this comes out, it'll be not too long before puck drop. So I hope you're all excited and ready to go for another weekend of Storm hockey. For now, though, thank you very much. See you later.
That was the Storm Report, brought to you by Storm TV. Tune in next week for more exclusive insights. Tickets on sale now at manchesterstorm.com.